In the fast-moving world of electronics, things are considered classic after about 20 years, which means next year, this guy is going to be a classic piece of tech. And what this means is a lot of us are kind of pulling the Xbox back out and examining it of saying, is this something worth collecting? You'll see a lot of those videos popping up by a lot of channels that I follow and recommend. And I've consumed most or all of theirs and I've enjoyed them. But I do think that, again, along the same lines, there are some things that have been missed. And a lot of it comes to people looking things very much from their own perspective of being a collector and having access to all versions of something, or looking at it as not a big deal for something to be $20 to buy online now if you don't have it, versus 80 or 100. And well, in many cases, there are reasons that things are more valuable on other systems from the same generation. There are a lot of games that are worth looking at on the Xbox, and it's worth just having a decent sized Xbox collection because it is an entry into the 6th generation and has a lot of really good games, honestly. But I'm going to look at it from not just the angle of being a collector and how much are they worth, because I feel there are 3 angles by which you would want to collect electronics. And that's the first one, of wanting to collect them for value, of having something valuable to collect. Now, the second is people who just want to play the games. You just want to have the games and you want them on some sort of physical media. So if the world ended and you were sitting there on a generator, you could still play these old games. Now that's a totally valid angle too. Now third and finally, and I think that the Xbox is going to offer the most for people like this, is folks who just for whatever reason missed these games the first time around and you just want to play them on original hardware in some way, shape, or form. And while there may be versions that people consider slightly superior on the PS2 or the GameCube, they're many, many times more expensive. So if you're just looking at playing a game like, say, Silent Hill 2, it's very much true that the PS2 version is superior for the reasons that people state. But then when you look at it being 4 or 5 times as much, it really is worth considering the Xbox, because when you're sitting there, especially if you want to hook it up to an old tube TV, the differences are not as huge, especially by today's technology standards of how far back these games are, that would really make that a non-decision. So I want to go into it a little more in depth from that angle of, is this a valid way to just play these games and experience them? And I did that by, hey, I'm a guy that I do have access to a bunch of old games, and so I can compare side by side. And I was able to just pull out my Xbox and pop a bunch of these games in and try to kind of clear my mind and say, okay, if I didn't have all the versions of these, is this fun? Am I having fun right now? Is this cool? Like, why am I enjoying myself if I am? Why am I not if I'm not? So without too much further ado, let me show some of these guys off. I've just freshly captured all this footage. This is all through Component from this Xbox right here. And I captured all of them in 480p and 4:3 aspect ratio, although a few of them did support widescreen, and I think 1 or 2 even supported 720p, just for consistency of the cuts between the games. I just recorded them all in the same, since most of them were just 4:3, 480p. Some games originally released on the Xbox are arguably still best on the Xbox, but I don't want to get too much into the originals on original hardware versus remasters debate in this video. That being said, a strong argument could be made that you can get the Xbox and these games cheaper than the remasters and an Xbox 360. So, in my opinion of being pretty cheap, I think that's a pretty good reason. And in the case of these 3 games that I'm showing here, Halo, Fable, and Chronicles of Riddick, there were quite a few changes to the graphics and the gameplay in the remastered versions. So it's really, that's a debate for another video that I do intend to make. But if you do want to play the original versions the way they were, you can pick them up the cheapest this way, which is a pretty strong argument in my opinion, and they do still play great. And you can get everything you need, controller, hard drives built in, be ready to go, and they still look pretty good even plugged in with old analog cables and upscaled on a modern TV. I mean, it's not the greatest. If you have an old tube TV or an old projection TV, that's going to be even better. But
you know, it's really, for the price, you can't knock it. For about the price of a modern game, you could get all of these games in an old Xbox if you shop around and you're pretty good and thrifty. So, yeah, I have to say that that moves me pretty well. And also, the originals. The originals, still the best.
Something good. Thank you. Here, I'll let you look after Rosie. She'll be safe with you.
The Xbox, of course, shared a lot of games with the other systems of its generation, and they varied from, say, Silent Hill and Metal Gear Solid, that although the developers claimed that they had improvements at the time, when we've compared them later, there are graphical effects that don't seem to work as well and sound technologies that are missing. But that being said, when playing them now, the differences don't seem as great, especially compared to some of the even worse ports that have been created later. And again, considering the price difference, some of these ports are a pretty decent way to play on original hardware. Silent Hill has a little bit of reduced fog quality. The sound is sampled at lower quality. But one cool thing about Silent Hill 2, I guess depending on how you look at it, is because it doesn't have the intelligent sound sampling system that the PS2 version has, it doesn't randomly play sounds. So for example, the whispering in room 209 happens on every playthrough. And so, I don't know, I found that kind of fun playing it, that I got to experience everything in a single playthrough, though some people may call that blasphemy. Though in general, the changes are fairly minor, but the price difference can be huge between the Xbox version and the GameCube or PS2 version of a game that is pretty popular. So if you can live with minor differences, and if you're looking at this footage that I captured recently off of these games, all in the last couple days, it it looks pretty close to the PlayStation versions of these games, and it takes someone really analyzing the footage side by side to tell the difference. And they are very playable and decent, and it's also very enjoyable. In a lot of other cases, the games are at least on par and sometimes significantly better. In the case of games like Grand Theft Auto and a few other games, there are pretty big improvements that make these the best console ports available on the Xbox. And so I mean, at worst, they're a little worse usually, but a lot of times they function better on newer TVs, have newer sound technologies, or newer effects, added draw distance, all kinds of things that can make these older games more pleasant to play in this day and age, can be found on the Xbox version. So I would say that that's another strong point in favor of the Xbox. One criticism you'll often see leveled against buying any Xbox games is that many of them are released on PC, and many would consider the PC ports better. And while I'm not going to argue against that, there are a number of games actually that are PC ports to the Xbox that have been altered a little bit. And in the case of Half-Life 2 and Doom 3, they're kind of shrunk down in a few ways, where some of the areas where there were sort of big water cooler moments, but you just kind of walked around a bit, have been cut out. And so it makes these sort of faster, a little more to the point versions of these games, which the graphics don't really blow your mind anymore at this point. So having some of these larger hallway segments in Doom, or some extended vehicle segments and things in Half-Life 2, I didn't mind having that stuff cut out, or it was just fun to see it be a little different. And so I would say that there are a few ports like that that are worthy on the Xbox, or are cool just to check out because they're different. And there are several others, though, where that is absolutely true, that there's no reason in getting the Xbox version. And The Elder Scrolls Morrowind is one like that. Now, I know, that was the first way I was able to play the game. I didn't have a PC that could run Morrowind at the time, so I borrowed an Xbox from a friend and had many, many hours of enjoyment from it. So, I would say for nostalgia, you might pick it up for that reason. It is cheap to buy, but the PC version has all sorts of official and unofficial patches and all sorts of mods that make it much, much better in every way. Now, that would also be true of Half-Life 2 and Doom 3 if they weren't altered in several ways from their PC ports. And there are all kinds of other games like that that are kind of fun to play on the Xbox, including the Max Payne games. A few of the Call of Duty games are changed a bit for console and have unique versions for the PS2 and the Xbox. But I would say don't always assume that if you've played it on PC it's the exact same game on the Xbox, or that there's no reason to pick it up even if it's only just a few dollars on the original Xbox. There are tons and tons of PC ports that and another thing actually that I almost forgot to mention about that is when your Xbox is modded and you have a faster, larger hard drive put in there, it eliminates the longer loading times that a lot of times was the weaker aspect of the Xbox version. Half-Life 2 is a lot more pleasant to play when you're loading it from the hard drive. So yeah, just another thing in there that makes it, decently worth considering playing a lot of these games on the Xbox.
All units.
I wanted to do a little mini segment on this guy even before I go into soft modding, because this is one of the most useful accessories for anybody, whether your Xbox is modded or not. Now, of course, this is an action replay. A lot of people remember the Game Shark, Action Replay, Game Genie, whatever your generation was. These were cheat devices that would allow you to cheat within games. But on the Xbox, this has a much, much bigger benefit. If we open it up, look what's inside. This is a memory card with an Xbox memory card to USB adapter. So at the time, this was to get cheat saves off the internet and copy them over to your system. But in this day and age, if you're worried about the hard drive ever going in your Xbox, this is the only easy consumer method that you can copy your saves over. Now, I've seen third-party versions of these cables, but they're getting harder to find just because the Xbox was not nearly as popular as the other systems of its generation. So some of these weird, obscure peripherals are getting harder to find, and these are getting hard to find. So if you do come across one, it's a pretty solid cable that will allow you to connect your memory card to your PC and back up your saves. Now, if you're soft modding your system, which I'll go into more in a moment, it's just a really convenient way to move small files back and forth if, say, you don't have your modded system plugged in to your network at all times. If, say, it's out in your garage and it's not hooked up to the network at all, you can just throw small files on the memory card and move them back and forth between a computer. Also, if you're for some reason concerned about security with your old Xbox and not wanting to hook it up to your network, again, just an easy way to move files back and forth. But if your system's not modded, this is one of the only ways available to you. So a really nice peripheral to find. If you score it at Goodwill for $5 like I did, I think it was even on tag sale, even better. But I've seen these go online for about $20. If you can get one for that, and if you're not able to find a third-party one or any other cheaper option at the time to hook up a memory card to your computer, it's not a bad way to go. Yeah, I would strongly recommend getting one of these. No video about the Xbox would be complete without talking about modding it, and specifically soft modding. The Xbox is probably the easiest for how much benefit it offers of any system ever to soft mod. Now, you've probably seen a lot of stuff about how many emulators you can easily get running on it and all sorts of homebrew stuff, so I won't go into that too much besides saying that it is a thing you totally can, and it's really easy to set up. I mean, once you mod your Xbox, you can just plug a network cable into it, and over FTP you can just send all the emulators over there and put them in the right folder and they work fine. It's that easy. But without going into any big tutorial on how to mod the Xbox, just if you're curious and you've never even looked into this, it is unbelievably simple. The easiest methods usually involve ordering a pretty inexpensive cable like this that adapts your Xbox controller port to a USB 1.1, so you can plug in a flash drive. Now, some people are nervous about making the flash drives themselves. They're really worried about damaging their controller ports. So if you look around, and I'm not going to hold your hand on this one, look around, you can actually get images or even just pre-made flash drives that other people have done where you just plug it in and it will soft mod your Xbox, and it's really that easy. It comes with instructions that are maybe 2 or 3 steps. And what this allows you to do, even just beyond the other things I've mentioned, is since the Xbox uses a pretty much off-the-shelf PC hard drive, you can swap out your hard drive for a much larger one, and you can back up all of your games. I'm not even talking about piracy. I'm talking you just like stick your game in the drive and you push the backup button and it just backs the game up. And you can just have all of them load off the hard drive. And for a lot of games, like I'll show off Half-Life 2 and Doom 3 later, one of the big knocks against those versus the PC versions at the time was longer loading times. And they load faster off the hard drive, which negates some of that. So that's a really nice thing. But beyond just that, any old regular Xbox, once soft modded, can run developer previews, betas, all sorts of stuff that are not finished Xbox games. And I've showed off video before, I'll show a little more from Starcraft Ghost, but there are all sorts of unreleased games or early versions of games that were released that have been found on development units since, that you can put on your just normal modern 5 minutes Xbox and you can try out. Starcraft Ghost being the biggest, most notable, most newsworthy one. But there are a whole bunch of other ones to check out, in addition to all the cool homebrew and emulation that you can do on these. So I would say just that in itself is almost worth the value of the Xbox, even if you don't even consider playing the Xbox versions of all these games that I've showed off and you don't really care about anything that you could play on another system or get on PC, as people often say. I think just the modability of an Xbox is a huge thing in its factor. And I know everybody says that, but a lot of times people are shy about talking about the developer builds thing because they're worried that someone's going to come after them. And well, it has happened, but sometimes it doesn't, and it hasn't happened yet on StarCraft Ghost or any of those other ones that I've seen, other people post videos or that I have. So yeah, I'm just going to throw it in here because I love that kind of stuff. I love unreleased games, what could have been, what were the developers thinking, if money was never an issue, what sort of game could they have made? I love that stuff. So that being something that you can do without having a developer system, but just a simply soft modded system, that is a huge, huge benefit of the Xbox, in my opinion.
So bonus, I'm a huge fan of Phantasy Star Online, and I have many, many fond memories of sitting and playing it 4-player couch co-op. Unfortunately, the Xbox version of Phantasy Star normally has an Xbox Live lockout, where if your system, you've never logged into the game with Xbox Live before, you get stuck at the title screen. But if your Xbox is modded, it's pretty easy to just go in and change it or create a fake profile. There's a number of ways to do it. But you can unlock the game, and it's really, really cheap to buy the game legally and back it up yourself, since it's not playable in most cases. And there are a few copies rolling around for the Xbox. But back it up, modify your files slightly, and you can play it 4-player couch co-op without ever having to connect to the internet or anything like that. And it's definitely, compared to the GameCube version, which has gotten really, really expensive depending on its condition, even just a loose disc is probably $40 or $50 right now. So yeah, for a way to play Phantasy Star Online again without, and there is, by the way, I should mention there's a private server to play it on PC, but that is not couch co-op once again. To play it 4-player split screen, it's this or the GameCube, and it's really, really cheap to get Phantasy Star Online for Xbox. And it's really, really easy to mod your Xbox. So yeah, hey, if you're a Phantasy Star fan, that almost alone makes it worth going out and getting an Xbox and soft modding it.